Hello everyone, this video will cover Module 3. Module 3, you are completing your first essay. So you're going to finish that rhetorical analysis essay. In Module 2, you chose the article that you wanted to respond to and you wrote an outline for me. So now what you're going to do is take that outline and you're going to turn it into an essay. So you're expected to spend the week working on this essay. I would recommend starting off like one of the first days of the unit, just sit down and try and write down as much as you can think of for the essay, just a really rough draft, and get all of your thoughts down. Even if it's not, formatted like an essay, that's fine. Then wait a couple of days. So we, call that kind of the marinating stage, and then copy and paste it into a new file and work on revising it. So making sure that you go through that process, this different stages of writing. We get something rough written down and then we make a new file and we create something that looks a lot better. And then maybe you do another draft after that for the final draft, where you do the final look through to make sure everything's right. I have been encouraging students this semester, especially in all of your classes, to save your work as separate files. That helps with if there are some issues with AI. Obviously, there's rampant use of AI, but to prove that you didn't use it or didn't use it beyond what's allowed for an assignment, then if you have those saved as separate files, then you can easily prove that something was yours that you wrote. So you can see the essay itself has an AI use of 1. And that basically means that if you want to use Grammarly to kind of help you with identifying major errors, spelling errors, that kind of thing, that's totally fine. But your writing needs to be your own. Everyone has their own authentic voice, and that's what I'm looking for. I even have a level of AI in the rubric, so you might score that low if your writing does not sound authentic. And so I've got a little description of what that means. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're doing writing for this class, that I'm expecting that authentic voice in all of your writing. So what you looked through the textbook for the previous module, you picked your article that you want to write about, and now you need to break down the author's argument strategy. The biggest mistake students make with this essay is just summarizing content. So they just this is what it's about, right? And then the second mistake that students make is writing their own essay about the topic that the person wrote about. So you're not doing either one of those things. What you're doing instead is called a rhetorical analysis, where you're breaking down the author's situation, like why are they writing this article, or you're looking at their different techniques and strategies that they've included in the argument. So you might notice, for example, that they've used sources. And so what do you think of their use of sources? Is it enough? You might notice that they have included a lot of personal experience. So Eddie Huang's Fresh Off the Boat is all a personal essay, sort of a memoir style essay of something that he experienced. And so that's going to be all, if you look at those, those rhetorical appeals, ethos, pathos, and logos, that's all ethos, which is his own credibility because it's what he experienced, but he's also including pathos because he wants the author to side with him emotionally. And so he is using his own story to help the author or the reader connect with the story. So different things like that. You can look at the use of opposing viewpoints. There are a lot of different things that you can look at for the arguments, and that's the body of the essay. So when you look at your assignment that you're working on here, we're starting off with a sentence that identifies the author and title, and then we're going to go over that, we have a thesis, and then the body paragraph. You have to have at least one. Obviously, most students have 2, and it kind of depends on whether you're covering like all positives or positives and some negatives. So let me show you an example here. This is the one I've been using in my other classes, and it's based on an article out of a different textbook. But basically, when you're looking at your article, you're looking for the one that you feel you can critique or respond to, and your main your first step is to decide whether you feel it's effective or ineffective. And so when you turn in those outlines, I'll be, going through those, and I'll be responding to you as to whether or not the thesis works. Your introduction then is just kind of that overview of what is it about. But the first thing you have to include is what article you're responding to. Any type of critique or response essay always starts with what you're critiquing or responding to. Thesis is your overall assessment. So this is my example here. I'm responding to Dan Ariely's article, Essay Mills. And so I give the first sentence is just kind of what it's about. And then I give a couple of sentences that just goes over, what he did. He was doing his own research into Essay Mills, and in his conclusion, what did he come up with? And then my thesis is right here, which is, despite not addressing opposing viewpoints, he writes a successful argument combining ethos with humor to make his point. So this is what I'm covering in my essay. These are the main ideas that I know that I want to cover. This is my main critique. So basically, if you're looking at body paragraphs, then I'm going to cover his credibility because he's a professor conducting his own experiment, and his use of humor. I probably will cover that all in one paragraph because they're tied together. Part of his credibility is to attract his audience, which is other instructors who are worried about students cheating. So a lot of the commentary in there, a lot of the way he has a conversational language, all of that ties together. So I'm looking at his use of rhetoric, which is the ethos and pathos. But I'm also looking at his vocabulary, what types of wording does he use? What types of examples does he include? All of those things would be part of my evidence to show, what I'm thinking here for this paragraph, all the positives of what works really well. What didn't work is because he is missing a lot of the components of what we would consider an academic argument. He doesn't include any sources or any opinions from other experts. He doesn't include anything beside his own experience. And he also doesn't address any opposing viewpoints, which would both be really important parts of argument. And so that's going to be my critique part of my essay, and I'll probably do that in a separate paragraph. The conclusion then would be fairly simple. I just want to summarize everything, a couple of sentences. And so I wrote out an example there of the conclusion. So you can just kind of think of introduction, conclusion, fairly short. The whole essay is fairly short. It's only 1.5 pages to 2 pages long. So we're thinking of a real focused kind of direct critique of the argument technique. And that's really important that you're focused on the technique itself, not the content of the, not what the actual content of article is. So just keep that in mind. I do have an example of a works cited entry for you that you can copy and paste straight into your essay. The documentation requirements, some of you, or most of you hopefully are familiar, at least roughly, with documentation. But documentation requirements for this essay are pretty simple. You have the works cited entry for the one article, and then in the essay, if you include anything that's specific, so like specific example or a quote, just put the page number. You'll have the same page number the whole time because all of the articles are just on one page since it's an ebook. So that page number is going to show up more than once. So the only thing that you're doing is turning that in for this module. Once you're done writing and revising and you're comfortable with it, then you'll turn it in here. I have information on the MLA format requirements, and I also have this using the online writing lab information. So we have this BrainFuse link over here on the side, BrainFuse Online Tutoring. When you open it up, there's a spot to submit a paper for the online writing lab, and then you can fill all of the information out as you go through. It will ask you some questions and that kind of thing, so you can submit your essay if you want, but make sure that you're giving them enough time to respond, typically 48 business hours. So if you want feedback, you'll have to have a good draft done by midweek to be able to get a response back. When you're done making all the changes and it's a good essay and there's not any major errors, then you can submit it here. All essays are AI level 1 use, which means that it's fine to use Grammarly, it's fine to use any like, you know, your word program that tells you if you're spelling things wrong, that's totally fine. If you're going to use an AI program to like help you rewrite a sentence or something, if you're struggling, that's fine, but you need to put it on your works cited page as a source. So that's something to get in the habit of doing. But any extensive use of AI that's really like changing your voice, changing your tone, changing your writing, the way that you put together your writing, that's going to be what's going to cause problems and lose you points. So there's an AI level on the rubric that will be to show you the points loss. So if you have questions this week, feel free to send me an email. It's not cheating to send me a draft of your essay before you turn it in, just so you know. And have a great week.